It's now 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakewood City Council for Monday, July 6th to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Boki.
Present.
Councilmember Brandstetter.
Here.
Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Simpson.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Whalen.
Present.
And Mayor Anderson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We're now going to move to public comments. Please bear with us. In this COVID environment, we have not been taking live public comments. We're going to attempt to do it tonight, though it's not required. We're going to do that for public participation. Public comments are accepted by mail, email, or live virtually. Send comments in advance by mail or email to Brianna Schumacher, City Clerk at 6000 Main Street, Southwest, Lakewood, Washington, or B. Schumacher, that's BSCHUMACHER at cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to 1 hour before the meeting will be provided to the City Council electronically. Madam Clerk, were there any submitted?
Mayor Anderson, we did not receive any public comments.
Now, virtual comments, if you would like to provide live public comments or public testimony during this meeting, you will need to join the Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling the telephone, dial 1-253-215-8782. That's 1-253-215-8782, and enter the participant ID, and this is a long one, 868-7263-2373. That's 868-7263-2373, or visit https://us02web.zoom.us, and that meeting code, which was 868-7263-2373. This is also on the published agenda. Upon entering the meeting, please enter your name or other chosen identifier. Use the raise hand feature to be called on during the public comment period or the public hearing portion of the agenda. When you are unmuted, please provide your name, city resident, such as Jason Whalen, Lakewood, Washington, and each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes. There is a timer and you'll go mute at the end of the 3 minutes. Outside of public comment and public hearing, all attendees on Zoom will continue to have the ability to virtually raise your hand for the duration of the meeting. You will not be acknowledged and your microphone will remain muted except for when you are called upon. Now I would allow folks for a few minutes to see if anybody is raising their hand virtually and attempting to sign in. And I can't sing, and I'm not present more than virtually to dance. Can't dance either. I'm not seeing anyone signing in. Having no public comments, we will declare the public comment section of the agenda closed. Now move to the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the City Council study session of June 8th, 2020. B, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of June 15th, 2020. C, approval of the minutes of the City Council study session of June 22nd, 2020. D, approval of claims vouchers in the amount of $2,502,753.95 for the period of May 16th, 2020 through June 15th, 2020. E, approval of payroll checks in the amount of $2,371,698.79 for the period of May 16th, 2020 through June 15th, 2020. F, motion number 2020-33, authorizing the execution of a contract with Communities in Schools to disperse 50,000 in coronavirus relief fund monies. G, motion number 2020-34, authorizing the execution of a contract with Living Access Support Alliance, LASA, to disperse 275,000 in coronavirus relief fund monies. And H, motion number 2020-35, authorizing the execution of a contract with West Pierce Fire and Rescue to disperse 142,000 in coronavirus relief fund monies.
Thank you. Now I would, as a matter of housekeeping, entertain requests by a council member to remove items F and G. Is that correct? F and G?
I would make that request.
33 and 34. Okay, we've removed F and G from the consent agenda. Are there any other items which any member of the council wishes to have removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion pass the consent agenda absent items F and G.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Simpson, seconded by Ms. Farmer, I believe, that we adopt the consent agenda, less items F and G. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries. We now have motion number 2020-33. I would entertain a motion to continue this to a date certain. Mr. Caulfield, do you anticipate when we'll have the contracts ready for consideration with addenda?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Our recommendation is to move both motion 2020-33 and motion 2020-34 to the date certain of your next regular meeting of July 20th, 2020.
Entertain a motion with regard to motion number 2020-33.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Been moved and second that we move motion to continue motion number 2020-33 to a date certain, July 23rd. Let's see.
Correction, July
No,
20th.
excuse me, I think I have the wrong date.
It's correct, Mayor. It should be July 20th.
July 20th. To July 20th. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carry, opposed, motion carries. Now move to motion number 2020-34. Entertain a similar motion.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Simpson, seconded by Ms. Farmer, that we continue motion number 2020-34 to a date certain, July 20th. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We now move to public hearings and appeals. Madam Clerk.
This is the date set for a public hearing to consider the proposed vacation of the easterly 56 feet of 148th Street Southwest right-of-way east of the intersection with Murray Road Southwest.
Thank you. And before we have an explanation of this by staff, in case anyone wants to testify, I'll run through the litany again as to how you sign in. And then while it's being explained, you'll have the opportunity to actually sign into the meeting. Public testimony on hearings is accepted by mail, email, or by live virtual comment. Send comments by mail or email to Brianna Schumacher, City Clerk at 6000 Main Street, Southwest Lakewood, Washington, 98499, excuse me, or B Schumacher, that's BSCHUMACHER at cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to 1 hour before the meeting will be provided to the City Council electronically. Ms. Schumacher, have any such comments been provided?
Mayor Anderson, we received one public comment, which was provided to the City Council in your agenda packet on page 105. That comment was received from Shelley Hull.
Okay, thank you. Now, virtual comments, if you would like to provide live public comments or public testimony, excuse me, during this hearing, you will need to join the Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling telephone number 253-215-8782. That's 253-215-8782, and entering the participant ID 868 7263-2373. That's 868-7263-2373, or visiting https://us02web.zoom.us this is, I believe it's an I. And anyway, this is signing into Zoom and going to 868-7263-2373. This has also been provided on the published agenda. Upon entering the meeting, please enter your name and choose another chosen identifier. Use the raise hand feature to be called upon during the public comments or public hearing, portion of this agenda. When you are unmuted, please provide your name, city of residence, such as John Simpson, Lakewood, Washington. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak during the public hearing, at which time your microphone will go mute. Outside of the public hearing, all attendees on Zoom will continue to have the ability to virtually raise their hand for the duration of the meeting. However, you will not be acknowledged and your microphone will remain muted except for when you are called upon. Now we have on this item, Mr. Sowetsky, excuse me. Frank, we're not hearing your audio. You're muted.
All right, let's try this again. All right. So for the City Council public hearing, we have a vacation request from IPT Lakewood Logistics Center to LLC, owner of real property directly adjacent to the right-of-way to be vacated. They have submitted a request to vacate a portion of 148th Street, which is not being used at this time, has been blocked off for a number of years with barricades. The portion of the right-of-way to be vacated is approximately 1,677 square feet in size and abuts parcels 0219226012 and a portion of 0219222034. All parcels abutting the proposed area of vacation are under common ownership. The right-of-way was acquired by Pierce County more than 25 years ago, designated as Maple Street. Later, it was renamed to 148th Street Southwest, to which the city became heir upon incorporation. The staff is recommending the applicant pay the full appraised value to the city, and we have an appraisal.
Mr. Sewell,
You went mute again, Frank.
Unmute.
There you go.
All right. There. Oh, it's because I moved my mouse over to a different screen. All right. As of February 22nd, 2020, an appraisal was conducted with a value of $27,403. It was conducted by Kidder Matthews.
So that's about $25 a square foot. Is that correct?
It comes out to 16.
That was 1,000. Okay.
Question.
Any
If I may.
questions? Mr. Whalen.
Yes, I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. that you said there was an appraisal done by Keeter Matthews. They're typically not in the business of doing appraisals. Did they provide a drive-by or a broker's opinion of value as opposed to an appraisal?
No, there is a full appraisal with comparatives and other information. Job number A20-0220. It is a 68-page appraisal with lots of information in it, not just a drive-by and not just a best guess.
Got it. Okay. I didn't know Keeter was doing appraisals. Very good.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mayor.
Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Switzky, you mentioned that the applicant had all the parcels around it and or joining it or something. And on page 102, there's a satellite photo. And I'm assuming they own the parcel directly north, and then there's another parcel directly to the east. But it looks like their boundary line actually bisects parcel 7812 to the south. So, because it looks like the red lines, there's a rectangle that goes north-south, and the yellow line that I guess is their ownership interest goes right down the middle of that. Am I seeing that wrong, or is?
You are seeing that correctly. That property was just purchased, so it had not yet been updated in the county records. But I do have the registration of the purchase. It was submitted with the packet.
So is it possible that they could come back and want the rest of those few feet there? It looks like there's probably another 10 or 15 feet maybe that to the west that is contiguous with the parcel 7812.
Unfortunately, no. The parcel was divided during the purchase. Where the line is drawn is the 100-foot right-of-way for the potential Highway 704, the Trans-Base Highway. And so they were held back. The state would not release the remainder of the parcel.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well.
Okay. Do I need to
Very-
go through the whole legal description?
No, I don't believe so. We're waiting here to see if anyone signs in as an attendee and raises their hand to testify at the public hearing. Does anyone out there wish to testify at the public hearing? Does anyone wish to testify at the public hearing? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Thank you, Frank. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you very much.
No. We'll now move to ordinances. Ordinance number 738, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 738, adopting amendments to titles 1, 12, 14, 15, 17, and 18A of the Lakewood Municipal Code and replacing Lakewood Municipal Code Chapter 3.64 with a new chapter 3.64 titled Property Tax Exemptions for Multifamily Housing.
For this, we have Ms. Spear.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, and members of the council as well. I'm going to share my screen very quickly here. And there's also already been a study session held on this issue as well as a public hearing. It was back on June 15th regarding the 2020 annual development regulation package. As Ms. Schumacher just mentioned, it addresses a number of titles, 1, 12, 14, 15, 17, and 18A of the Lakewood Municipal Code. And then there's a second piece to this package this evening within the ordinance that's replacing the current multifamily tax exemption program with an updated version of it that's reflected of state law and municipal best practice. So very quickly, these were talked about before with the council, but this is a summary within each title of the types of changes we're talking about. Many of them are technical in nature. There's very little substantive change. In 18 and 18A, that's where you see more of the changes. Part of these are changes that are recognized since the new 18A was adopted and put into place last fall. So these are just errors or things that need to be changed after the title has been used a little bit by both the public and staff. And then there's a couple of others that are simply updating references to various sections of state law, for instance. The multifamily tax exemption chapter summarized here, it moves some definitions into 18A where the rest of the development code regulations definitions are located. This removes the tax incentive urban use center, or TIUUC, which is something that the council has considered and taken action on in the past. It retains the residential target areas, and so those at this point would remain unchanged. There's new requirements for the RTAs per, as I mentioned, the new state law and updated municipal practice. There's a version here on your screen now of the two maps for both the TIUUC and the residential target areas. The TIUUCs would go away altogether, and then the residential target areas either could stay exactly the same, or the council might take action at some time in the future to alter current boundaries, establish new ones, what have you, per the process that's identified in the new chapter. So those will not change this evening with this action of this ordinance. However, that's something for the council to consider in the future. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions for Ms. Spear? Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Spear, one of the changes that was included, and I'm looking on page 126 of the packet, and it is a change regarding planned development districts. And it's under 18A 3540. And in C subparagraph 1, and there is some wording that changed the nature of the narrative requirement under improvement. And is this wording a result of some problematic situations that developed with one or more PDDs as we were trying to move them through the process and deal with folks in the neighborhood? Or what's the catalyst for this narrative change?
This was a request, Councilmember Branstetter, that came from the current planning staff within the department. It's from a couple of different experiences, I believe. It's both how do you define superior? There's no description of that within the Lakewoods Municipal Code. And also having more innovative than conventional methods. That over time can become a little problematic when you have changing development techniques or tools or facilities to use, what have you, over time as well. So what does conventional development methods mean becomes confusing over time. So the idea was providing a net benefit to the city was something that could be a little more easily described by staff for applicants, and also be usable by applicants as they're trying to prepare their applications.
Okay, I guess that one of my thoughts around the wording, and I understand superior because superior requires a comparison to something that it's really not necessarily hard to do if there's nothing else to compare it to. But on the other hand, the wording talks merely about a net benefit, which can be infinitesimal. You know, how does staff looking at where someone would, what would someone not have to say to not meet that any net benefit at all requirement?
It would be a matter of simply following the letter of the code. So meeting the minimum requirements for what's within particular frontage development standards or internal to a development standard. So just following the letter of the law, if you will. Going beyond that is where you start to talk net benefit. So if it's transportation, it's maybe some additional mitigation on transportation patterns. If it's design of the site, maybe it's doing more than what code requires. But that was language suggested by staff as saying this is something that we could refer to and converse with applicants about a little easier than what the current code says.
So would that mean that someone that proposed a PDD that met code, but only code, would not meet that standard?
Correct. And that's the intent under plan development districts in the first place, is that they are supposed to be something that allows an applicant to do something a little different because they're doing something to the advantage of the city.
So maybe I should ask it in the other way. Under what circumstance would the city find the narrative insufficient? And it would just be, for example.
I can't answer that question for you. It's going to be a case-by-case basis. It's part of the internal process for the department, and when they're sitting down with an applicant in a pre-development application meeting or moving forward through permit review, it's going to change at each step of the way for each case. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a clear example right now.
Okay, I'm having trouble envisioning how somebody could end up not checking that block. I understand it's a whole lot easier to check than a superior block, but I guess we'll see how it plays out when we get the next few examples and see if it gives us what we want to do to ensure that planned development districts are really assets in the neighborhoods where they're put in, but that we don't block them from being allowed. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Spear? Then I'd entertain a motion on ordinance number 738.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Mr. Whalen, seconded by Mr. Simpson, that we adopt ordinance number 738. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the council?
There is none, Mayor.
Is there any new business to come before the council?
There is none, Mayor.
Then we move to Mr. Caulfield for reports by the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I'd like to call upon our city attorney, Heidi Wachner, who will give you an update on a question that you had a couple of months ago on whether or not the admissions tax is applicable to golf courses in Lakewood. So with that, city attorney.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council, I'm Heidi Wachter, your city attorney, and I was asked to look into the applicability of admissions tax to golf courses. And as it turns out, that depends on the golf course. And I have put my materials in starting at page 165 of your packet. And it seems that there is one golf course, the Oak Brook Golf Course, to which admissions tax as construed in our code and in the state law would apply. And that is because there is a difference between paying for admission to a round of golf versus having a membership or something of that sort. And that's explained in the memorandum. Cutting to the chase, we have a golf course to which this tax would apply, but from whom we have not been collecting. And that leaves you with the options of whether or not to go back and collect back taxes and then continue to collect going forward, or to realize that this was as much our fault as probably the golf courses, in that we did not go back and do any sort of reminders or clarifications to this point, and work with the golf course to get them into compliance and then go forward from there. And one of the suggestions in that recommendation is that we would start more like October 1st. So we had an even quarter, or possibly even starting with a new year, so that the bookkeeping is very clear as to when we started collecting it. I would be happy to try and answer any questions or address some point that you saw in the materials that you were hoping I would cover in more detail.
Any questions from Ms. Wachter? So I had a couple. One, I'd note that the City of University Place charges a 5% admissions tax on Chambers Bay. They instituted that for the US Open for the admissions tickets, but have continued collecting it against rounds of golf. I see there are really three options. One, we look backwards. Two, we look forward, and then we have two options there: start collecting the tax sooner rather or later. And the third one is repeal it as it relates to golf courses. The confusion I have is with respect to going forward, why the recommendation is to wait another couple of months. If the tax is actually owed retrospectively, and we aren't going, if we decide not to try to collect it in arrears and go forward, why are we, it's simple arithmetic. Why are we not collecting it, say, the first of the month?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I take responsibility for that. And to put it in skiing terms, I think I got out over my tips on that one. I went a little bit beyond the legal piece and went to more the clean line of when you get quarterly reports and financial reports of that sort. It's probably less cumbersome to try and keep it just in quarters for quarterly report purposes. But in point of fact, you are correct. It could be just started from the moment we know that someone's not paying a tax that applies to them.
And do we know what the magnitude of this tax is?
I am not aware of what the magnitude is. And for that reason, if you look on page 166 of the packet, there is sort of a thumbnail of what it would look like depending on what the sales are. And I think part of the problem there is that because we haven't been collecting, we don't have a firm handle on what's going on out there. I think it's fair to say, if you've been in Lakewood for any length of time, this is a business that's been making a valiant effort, but I don't think it would be fair to say that we're missing a huge amount of money. Any amount that is due us, we should be collecting, but I don't think this is something that created a huge hole in our budget.
Well, they also converted from being a private club to a public pay-to-play golf course. So
that is correct, Mr. Mayor.
So Mr. Caulfield, raise your hand.
Mayor, I was just going to point out, we just had, I know Ms. Kraus and I had some real basic conversations about how much it could be, and based on other golf courses in the area, we think it could be anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000 a year, and that would be based on annual income of about $750,000 a year.
So we're looking at $2,500 a month. So round numbers.
Yeah.
Mr. Branstetter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question of that if we want to start collecting the tax, is there any sort of an amendment that we have to make to any of our existing ordinances or the code?
No, Councilmember Branstetter. In order to start collecting this tax, what you would be doing is applying existing code. The current situation is that there may have been some misunderstanding in terms of interpretation. And in fact, the DOR, the Department of Revenue, goes into some detail about golf courses, because there has been some mystery around some particular types of admission, ski lift tickets, admission to golf course, things of that nature. But they resolve any question about it. Your code is written in a way that golf courses would be subject to the tax. We just haven't been collecting it from this one golf course to which it would apply.
And I would be of mind not to seek retroactive, because I wouldn't want to go retroactive to a date where there was a second golf course. 2 years ago, we had the golf course that was the public golf course run by the county. And if we were to go back any further, if we were to go back into that time period, to be fair, we'd have to be looking to try to figure out what kind of admission tax was due then. So I would be in favor of giving the city manager the go ahead to begin to collect the tax as soon as possible. By notifying the golf course of the requirement for the tax, and but not going retroactive.
Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Wachter, so just a couple of questions. Do we know what University Place does, and the mayor mentioned that, and they do that. Do we know what other entities do? Does every city government that levels admissions tax tax their golf courses? And then what other exemptions are there? There's clearly an exemption for private clubs. So, I mean, I guess at that point in time, the legislature must have had a lot of guys from Broadmoor or something, but are there, so those two questions, I guess. One, what other cities do? Are there other loopholes? In other words, are they competing against municipal courses that don't have to pay? Does Tacoma charge an admissions fee at Meadow Park, for instance? I know the county doesn't charge outside because the county does not have an admissions tax in place. So anything out in the unincorporated areas doesn't have a charge, but do we know that?
I do not have specific examples for you, Councilmember Boki and members of the council. What I will tell you is, if you have imposed an admissions tax and you have not carved out golf courses, the directive from the state, from the DOR, is that golf courses regular paying a fee to be admitted to play a round of golf would be subject to the admissions tax. And so to the degree that there are cities that are not collecting it without having carved it out somehow, then you're looking at the situation that Lakewood is in.
Do they have to pay a sales tax on their green fees, or is the sales tax not on there theoretically in lieu of the admissions tax?
To the degree that I researched this, the admissions fee goes to the greens fee. There are some sales taxes typically charged at these kinds of clubs that would apply to things like possibly gear rental, or if they have a pro shop, those types of things.
Right.
Pretty soon you get into the weeds of each and every transaction that is taking place at these facilities. And with regard to the clubs, I'll use the word loophole because that's the word that you used, but what you're paying for at the clubs doesn't necessarily represent either one game of golf or 365 games of golf. It represents access to the course in accordance with whatever rules the club has, in addition to access to other amenities. So it's hard to be specific So in other words, at Oak Brook, if you buy a 10 round admittance, you're still paying for 10 rounds of golf. At Broadmoor, the club you cited, it may be that membership gets you access and you could play 2 or 3 rounds a day, but it doesn't represent a specific number of games. And what the DOR is coming down on is where you have paid for admission to a particular activity, that is where the admissions tax, to the degree of jurisdiction has it, attaches.
So I would
Great,
just
thank
add
you.
that WAC 458-20 183 golf rounds of golf are subject to sales tax. There was actually an audit out at Chambers Bay, and I was familiar with. And they also at Tacoma, DOR came up with some formula and attributed part of the monthly membership fee as being for golf on residents members and added a sales tax on that. So they couldn't calculate it, so they made it up and charged it. So what's the sense? Well, you want a sense of the council on this, Mr. Caulfield? Is that Mr. Bradstetter has?
Yes.
chimed in?
Yeah, we would. Just wanted to point out, I think the reason that this has fallen through the crack over the years is because prior to, well, it's probably been 6 or 7 years now, Oak Brook was a private club. And so under that scenario would not have been subject to an admissions tax when the admissions tax was first levied by a previous city council.
Mhm.
But yes, Mayor, would like to get some kind of a understanding of whether we wait until fourth quarter to start collecting, or if you want us to start collecting effective August 1st.
Mr. Whalen.
Well, I would not retroactively collect anything, but I think prospectively I would wait till the fourth quarter. They need to have a little bit of transition time, in my opinion. I'm not a member, I don't golf, but seems to me as another small business in our community, it would be better to give them some transition time.
Yeah, I think I would do Mr. Simpson.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Mr. Mayor, that I think beginning of the fourth quarter would be a good time. Gives the club some time to get its books squared away. And I think it's just a neighborly thing to do.
Ms. Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Same for me. No back collections and start collecting at the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and I'm of the same mind. Another factor in that is that it's usually charged with the admission, just like sales tax is. So they likely would have been charging it if they knew about it.
Right.
So to go back retroactively would be taking it straight out of their margin.
Mr. Mayor, I vote for the fourth quarter.
Well, I think you've got a pretty strong consensus there, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor.
I do have one quick clarifying question. I may have misheard Ms. Wachter. We're talking about the admissions tax, not a sales tax, but it sounds like a sales tax might be applicable in rounds of golf. One, not both, right?
Both.
I will look at that. I did not flesh out other potential taxes. The way that I came across other taxes had more to do with different transactions that occur at a golf course. So I will double check on the greens fee question and applicability of sales tax.
And that, Ms. Wachter, that is WAC 458-20 183E.
Though I'd just like to point out, Council, that the sales tax is levied by the State Department of Revenue, and we receive a pass-through on that, but they're the overarching legislative authority on sales tax, not the city.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Caulfield, back to you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Hey, I have a few updates I'd like to share with you. The first is I'd like to start off with Western State Hospital. We regularly hear these rumblings that perhaps DSHS is going to seek preemption of local zoning authority regarding Western State Hospital and the plans that they have down there. Mr. Buer followed up with his contacts at DSHS earlier this morning, and they have no interest, that's certainly at the staff level, of them pursuing that. So in case you hear some rumblings out there, particularly from state legislators, what we heard from DSHS is that they do not have an interest in preempting local zoning authority. However, DSHS staff did outline that there are other proposals that they're going to be reporting to the state legislature unbeknownst to us. The first one, of course, is the plan that they're currently working on, which is an update to their master facility plan, of which is going through the environmental review as we speak right now. They have another option that they're going to be reporting to the state legislature, and that would be that they have a desire to build their new 350-bed forensics facility on the former golf course. The challenge with that is that it's not zoned to allow for that. So DSHS would need to pursue both a comprehensive map amendment and a zoning code amendment from this body in order for that to even be allowed legally. Where that's coming from is going back to the master plan that they're currently pursuing would result in having to tear down building 27. However, the federal judge that's overseeing the True Blood lawsuit apparently does not like that and is expecting DSHS to somehow keep building 27. We also understand that DSHS has not had an opportunity to brief the federal judge about what their plan and their proposal is. But again, that option apparently is one that they're looking at. But right now, for that to happen, they would need some significant land use changes. But also that whole area is very, very environmentally significant. So that would pose some very deep challenges as well. Another option that they're looking at is that they would build a 350-bed facility in the vicinity of where a bunch of buildings are, 24, 25, 26, and 27 are. But that would be over kind of to the northwest, kind of over toward, you get towards Steilacoom High School. But there's a gulch there, which is also even more environmentally sensitive than where the former golf course was, including Garrison Springs, which has some wells, and that's where back in the day the water came from. Actually, I think they're still drawing water from that area. So that would pose some very significant environmental concerns. So right now, though, those are some of the updates that they're going to be providing the state legislature. Meanwhile, they are moving forward with the plan that they submitted, which we have deemed at this point in time to be complete. If they come back, and right now we're accepting comments through July 10th, and that kicked off on June 10th. If they come back with some amendments to that, depending upon how significant they are, they might have to do a complete do-over. And DSHS staff is aware of that. But again, at this point in time, we're just following the process that they have submitted to us based on the proposal that they have. This is very challenging working with DSHS on this. I'll just be completely upfront with you. We regularly work with a number of agencies in Lakewood on updating their master facilities plan, and they're relatively straightforward. Some recent examples include Pierce Transit, Pierce College, Clover Park Technical College, even St. Clair Hospital. So it is a little challenging, but again, we have what they've provided to us, and that's what we're focusing on. So I just wanted to keep you appraised of what we learned, and as we have more information to share, we'll certainly pass that on to you. COVID-19, unfortunately, we're still in phase 2. You probably all read in the newspaper that the health department was looking to recommend that Pierce County go to phase 2.5 as opposed to phase 3. However, that's been put on the back burner for now. However, one of the things that the health department is doing is they got a couple of mobile trailers that they can roam around the county to provide testing, and they're going to begin doing that in later this month. And one of the areas in Lakewood that they'd like to perhaps kick off is in the Springbrook neighborhood. And of course, we'll also ask that they focus on other parts of Lakewood. But they only have 2 trailers for all of the county. But again, their goal is to get out there and begin testing people for COVID-19. Judge Adams, our municipal court judge, she mentioned to me this morning that at the state level, the Chief Justice notified all the courts in Washington State that there is some available CARES Act money specifically for courts. And they're going to be putting together an application process and sending that out here in the next month or so. And so Judge Adams will, once we get that, we'll take a look at that and see if there's any opportunity for our court to be able to submit for the reimbursement of costs that we've incurred because of COVID-19. So hopefully we'll get something there. Regarding the CARES Act monies that we have on the grant side. So I got an update from our economic development manager, Becky Newton, this morning. And so we went live on July 1st for the small business relief grants. And to date, we've received 25 actually, so now we're up to 43. We have 43 applications, and we're expecting many more to come in. And that was just in the first few days. On the other hand, the COVID-19 CDBG, the loan program, right now, I think we have 2. We've received, if I recall, we have 2. And the feedback that we're getting from businesses that are eligible is that they're resistant to taking on any debt. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. We'll see how things go here in the next few weeks. And it might be that I come back to you and ask you, do you want to, transition that from a loan program to a grant program. We're also hearing from a number of businesses that they have considered the programs but decided not to apply, even though they're experiencing a decline in revenue. But at they just at this point in time, they're just kind of on pause and kind of making do. But at the same time, they did want to pass on, a number of businesses have done this, pass on their appreciation to the mayor and the council for making these resources available to them. So a lot of goodwill out there from the business community on that. Also last week, we were contacted by Pierce County, who's taking the lead on making available $4.2 million for a emergency shelter facility here in Pierce County. And so they invited Tacoma, Puyallup, Lakewood, and I believe University Place to the table on that. And so they had their initial conversation late last week. And I think the Puyallup tribe is involved in that as well. So as more information on that comes about, we'll certainly keep you posted on what's going on there. I think, as I previously mentioned, the Economic Development Administration, or the EDA, has about over $1 billion available for the region of which Washington State is a part of. And long story short, our Public Works Engineering team, as well as representatives from our Community and Economic Development team, have had some conversations with EDA staff, and we have identified about 9 or 10 projects, including a number of infrastructure projects that we're going to submit grant applications for. And they have suggested in the area of, $1 million to $3 million is an area that they think we would compete pretty effectively there. Again, we're gonna pursue some funding there, see what happens. What we have been told by EDA is that it's, quite frankly, a first come, first served. Once the monies are gone, that's it. The caveat is that the monies need to be spent, I think, a year after the grant is awarded. So basically having projects that are somewhat shovel ready or in a position of high level of design. The summer concerts, we were hoping to kick that off later this month. The caveat was with that is when we move forward with scheduling those, that was about a month ago, and quite frankly, we were anticipating to be in at least phase 3, if not phase 4. However, since we're still in phase 2, we cannot move forward with those concerts, certainly in the near future. So we have, I know we've been using the word cancel, but I would say it's more like we'll postpone them. And then hopefully as the county moves into phase 3, if that happens in August, we can then bring back the summer concerts and have those available for the public. I also wanted to just let you know, development services activity continues to do quite well, signifying that there is a strong appetite for investment here in Lakewood. Very positive impact on the policies that this body has put in place, and certainly the ordinance earlier this evening, 738, is a key contributor to that, and always refining and making changes to show that, yes, we are open for business, but at the same time, based on our community standards. Halfway through the year, our development services activity is actually better. Well, so first of all, 2018 and 19 were monster record years. They're not too far off from 2019, but they're better than 17, 16, and 15. So kind of in the worst of times, we're doing okay in terms of the investment opportunities that people see here in Lakewood. So that is a bit of a bright spot on our horizon. Mr. Busich, our Public Works Engineering Director, wanted me to pass along that probably next week on Monday and Tuesday, maybe into Wednesday, they're going to move forward with the second treatment of alum down at Awc Lake, and we'll do some community outreach on that as well. On the census front, really want to commend our census team that's led by Tiffany Spear and Brian Humphreys, our planning manager and human services coordinator, respectively. They have been working with representatives at the county and at the federal level to really get the word out. And here in Lakewood, our response is over 62%. However, in a couple of our underserved neighborhoods, Tillicum and Woodbrook is almost at 50%, which is a 70% increase from where it was in 2010, when the response rate was only 28.4%. Likewise, the Springbrook area has seen a 17.5% increase, and we're still not done. They're at 40.3%, whereas in 2010, it was 34.3%. So we are getting the word out. People are returning the information to the Census Bureau, and so we'll stay on that. And I think it's been kicked out till October 31st, if I recall. So there's still a few more months, and we're going to continue to take a proactive approach there. I think you're probably aware that we did submit our application to the Office of Economic Adjustment, which I understand is getting a new name. They're getting a new name under the new NDAA that Congress is considering. But in any event, for our JBLM North Access project, it's an $18.97 million project, and 50% of the grant amount that we have requested is $9.485 million. I'm cautiously optimistic about this. We have a shovel-ready project. We have our match. Another key item is we have a letter of endorsement from JBLM, from the base commander, which is huge. So I'm hoping that we're looking pretty good. Here in the next few weeks, they expect to send us some more paperwork if we move on to the next level to continue the application process. At the end of the day, they expect to award grants the middle of September. And then shortly thereafter, they expect agencies to say whether they're in or not, and then have contracts in place by the end of the federal government's fiscal year, which is September 30th. But I do want to commend our Public Works Engineering Department under the leadership of Paul Busich and many others who have really put in an incredible amount of work to really submit a very, very competitive package. Lastly, Independence Day was on Saturday. Just want to say, from a police and fire perspective, compared to other years, it was very routine. There weren't any ups or downs in terms of call for service or anything along those lines. Actually, on the police side, it was they had a number of calls for service, and we're going to get those numbers for you. But nothing out of the extraordinary. It was fairly routine from other calls for service scenario or perspective. On the fire side, West Parish Fire and Rescue reports that they had 14 fireworks related fires within their service area, which includes Lakewood, Stillicum, and University Place. 12 of those fires were in Lakewood. However, none of them were structural, and they were all vegetation or grass or brush related. And so they also report, they didn't receive any reports of any injuries or anything along those lines. Likewise, police didn't either. So just wanted to pass that on to you. And then the last item, I wanted to get your direction on this. At your next regular meeting on July 20th, if you recall, back in early June, back when we were in phase 1, I think we were still in phase 1 under COVID-19, the council asked to move the public hearing to consider proposed code amendments regarding the discharge of fireworks to only be on Independence Day or July 4th and not allow it on July 3rd and the 5th. And if you recall, you did receive an incredible amount of testimony, a lot of written testimony. Actually, it was all written testimony. However, you wanted to push that public hearing out to another date when you could do it in the council chambers and have people come in, which would really be phase 3 or preferably phase 4. And again, when that decision was made back in June, we were thinking it would be in phase 4 by the middle to latter part of July. So my question for the mayor and the council is, do you want to keep that docketed on July 20th, or do you wish to take action to, and you'll need to take action on July 20th to move it to another date certain? So I'd like to know that now, so then we can prepare your agenda packet, because if you want to move it, that would be the best way to do it. If you don't want to move it, I don't want to give a sense of, to the community that, the council's going to hold a public hearing.
So if you're interested in pushing it forward so we can have live testimony, raise your electronic hand, please.
Pushing it forward, meaning having it on the 20th?
No, pushing it for, continuing it so that we can have live testimony. So we got 3 and me. So there's 4 of us, bare minimum.
And my thought there is the only reason is because whether we hold it on the 20th of July in a Zoom capacity or whether we hold it in a live capacity in August, nothing's going to change until 2022.
Correct.
State law is running. So we might as well, let people know that you're in like Flynn for the 3rd of July through the 5th at present. And even if we were to change it tomorrow.
Yes.
And Mayor, if I might, if you're gonna change it from July 20th to another date certain, just given the way things are going, you might want to consider September or October.
Yeah.
I'm just being right up front with you. That's if you want the council.
I don't think anything's going to change until the end of July for sure. So it's good. All right, well, we'll do that then. You have anything else, Mr. Caulfield?
Well, I just wanted to be clear. So Mayor, when we bring it, so this will have to be on your agenda for the 20th, and then, but in there, we'll have an agenda bill for the council to not hold a public hearing, but to move that public hearing to another date certain. And are you okay with September, or did you want to come back in August?
I think it's going to have to be September.
Okay.
Mr. Whalen.
Yeah, Mr. Caulfield, in that agenda bill, just so that the public understands that we're not shoving this under the rug, could we put some statement there about state law and how the provisions require, action taken in 2020 after the 4th of July don't result in a change to law locally until 2022?
We will do that, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm assuming that's accurate. But.
Mr. Branstetter, you have something? Just your hands up.
Yes. I actually had a question on this regarding for the city attorney. The ordinance that we're framing around the public hearing, in addition to the dates for fireworks and selling fireworks and things like that, there was a section of the ordinance that had to do with aligning whether it was a misdemeanor or whether it was something like that.
Correct.
Is that more time sensitive than the other? For instance, while the changes in dates and things like that couldn't be effective until 2022, is that portion of an ordinance or a separate ordinance with just that allowed to be affected immediately?
Well, to the degree that what you're doing is you're bringing it in line with state law, it's possible that some parts could be. It would depend on whether the difference was a matter of taking us outside our jurisdiction. So I'd have to go line by line to specifically answer that. But it's possible that some of that could be corrected without a lag.
So because that was like one section within the ordinance that it doesn't seem that fell within the intent of why there was a lag, because it doesn't affect sales or just, okay. And when we know that's fine. And then Mr. Caulfield, are we going to have to actually, we'll have to set an exact date for the hearing to be moved to, that'll be an action at the next meeting?
That's correct, Councilmember Branstetter, and I'm just following the process that you initiated back in June. I didn't want to deviate from that, but yes.
Okay, so because we have the hearing publicized, is there an option to have the hearing but not close it and then continue it in case that there are some people who have been gearing up to speak with us or send us comments on the 20th?
So Councilmember Branstetter, the answer is yes, you can do that, though we're taking testimony, right now, and we're providing all that to you anyways as part of a public hearing. So, but the short answer is yes, if you wish to do that, you could do that.
Okay, but is what we're getting now being put into a record?
It is, Councilmember Branstetter.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Caulfield on that? Do you have anything further, Mr. Caulfield?
I do not, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, then we will move to council comments before our executive session. Mr. Bulkey.
Yeah, I have a question for the city manager. So John, given events around the country and whatnot, have you had any discussions with the Clover Park School District in regards to the school resource officer program?
No, we have not. Actually, I'm going to be talking to the superintendent on a couple of occasions this coming week, or maybe it's next. I know this week I have a couple of upcoming meetings with him, and I plan on bringing that up with him if he doesn't plan on bringing that up with me. So.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we'll stay with you, Mr. Bulkey.
Yeah, I don't have any comments. Thanks.
Ms. Farmer.
Well, the first thing on my list was the fireworks, so thank you for knocking that out. The second thing, Mr. City Manager, is it possible to get a regular update on the small business loans and grants that we've been talking about? I'll use the word dashboard, and that'll sound really fancy, but I really mean like a word table or an Excel spreadsheet graph that tracks like the number of applications, the number of the amount of money available in that particular program, and then the amount dispersed. I'm finding it hard to keep track of the programs and what's going on. And And by regular, it could be monthly, it could be bi-weekly, it could be at every council meeting, whatever works for staff. That would be helpful for me.
So yes, we plan on having that, Councilmember Farmer.
Thank you.
We're working on developing that right now.
Okay, thanks. The second thing is that recently I was walking on the trails at Fort Steilacoom State Park, and I encountered 2 motorized vehicles, one a quad and one a mini motorbike. And it really surprised me because I've been walking those trails for almost 17 years and really don't see motorized vehicles there at all. You know, the walking, the dogs, and the occasional foot-powered bicycle. Upon inquiring with the city manager, it appears our code does not specifically prohibit motorized vehicles, which also surprised me because I think it's a fairly common thing for urban or suburban city parks to have a prohibition against this. So it got me to thinking about other forms of new technology of motorized vehicles, and I've also seen those electric skateboards and those things called a one wheel, where they have a big wheel in the middle, and then you put your feet on the side of them. There are e-bikes, which I don't see quite as often, but I know that they're becoming more popular. I'd prefer to see non-motorized trail use in our city parks. But I don't know if there's any interest in the council in having the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board research the issue and come back with a recommendation.
Any comments from council?
Well, I can comment. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
have
so
any
would I.
problem. No, I'll raise my hand here.
Mr. Whalen?
Yeah, I wouldn't have any problem taking a look at it. I don't know if this is an issue that they've looked at in the past as part of the legacy planning process, but yeah, I don't have a huge issue with it. My only concern is we got to watch for unintended consequences. I think that sometimes e-bikes can be used by people with disabilities. And so we want to make sure that we don't, have an unintended consequence by irreparably impacting people that we don't intend to impact that way. But I think it's fine to study.
I think the suggestion that it goes to the Parks and Rec Board is a good one. Those people are pretty sensitive to those things. Got some parks professionals there that work with ADA access every day.
Yeah.
And so I can see them coming up with something like, don't tear up trails with quads, but if you have a disability and you have an electric assist bike, that's fine, just throwing it out there for them to figure out. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms.
I
Moss.
would like to have the research done on that as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, send it to Miss Mary and her team, and they can work.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Simpson,
Good here, Mayor.
Ms. Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say good news on the census. That was a good report. Happy to hear that. Thank you. And I did attend a few of the conferences for the AWC conference a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was now. And it was a good conference, but for me, it was geared more toward new council members. So it was a lot of reviews in there, which is also good. Some of it was very helpful. I attempted to vote, and they sent the test message, the test question out. I voted on it, and then all of a sudden my screen just went dead. So I was kicked out. Maybe I said the wrong thing. No, but I enjoyed some of they had one on diversity that was really interesting to me. So they had some good conversation, but they're in the same situation that we're in, trying to decide how we're going to make all of these things come together. So I really didn't get any new material that I could deal with, but it was a discussion and it was good to hear it. So I appreciated that. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Brandstetter.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I shouldn't say I was glad to hear, but I noted that Lake Spanaway is experiencing a severe toxic algae bloom, while with Awc Lake we are have moved significantly in the other direction, with no indications at all of any of that. Quite the opposite, and with the second reinforcing treatment due to come on, it looks like, at least with respect to toxic algae, we may have turned a corner there. And so, given all of that we went through and all that staff went through to come up with what's the right way to work on management of Awc Lake, I think, that's a good indicator to us that, if a nearby lake is having it, it's not just we're not just lucky on the weather. It's because we did something that impacted that. I also did some participating with the AWC conference. Again, I found it very different to hold a conference like that, where much of the value in past conferences has been in interactions. To do it in the virtual thing, with many of the presentations merely being tapes with no interaction with presenters at all. At the business meeting, I did represent the city. I would note that Council Member Keel from University Place was elected to be the vice president this coming year, which puts him in line to be the president for AWC a year out. The mayor of Twisp is going to be the current AWC president, and so she is moving forward. There were some discussion regarding what's called the AWC Statement of Policy, which is sort of a 5-year long-term set of goals or parameters around which AWC will operate. There was a proposed addition to that spoke to asking AWC to support even greater regionalization under the GMA, and that I did propose an amendment to that to take that language out and substitute and retain language that said, in looking at the GMA, prioritize local control with matters for regionalization should be, only when that's consistent with being able to do that in any given region. And the body as a whole passed that change in language, barely, but with a majority to make that change in language that's there. I had one question because I noticed that Pierce County, in an effort to make their or to do something regarding their moratorium on enhanced services facilities, that the County Planning Commission is accepting comment regarding a set of recommendations that they have regarding the siting of enhanced service facilities in the unincorporated county. And we may want to look at those draft things, particularly to make sure that they're not going to redirect having those facilities not in unincorporated areas, but only in urban growth areas, which would perhaps do something more negatively, but also look at them to see whether there is anything from in their draft policies that would be of value to us to consider in our own policies going forward. Again, this is in their planning commission, and I'm the hearings on the 28th with comments being accepted until that. So I guess I would ask staff to take a look at what those draft regulations look like to just see if there's a Lakewood impact or a Lakewood desire to influence them. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Mr. Whalen.
Nothing too exciting. I wanted to just provide a little personal reflection on the 4th of July. The fireworks display, throughout the city was probably vigorous on the 4th. I didn't see a ton of it on the 3rd and less so on the 5th. So to the extent folks were trying to be somewhat compliant with the existing code, I think for the most part, folks were respectful about that. But that's all I had. We're always going to get a few comments as we did yesterday and today, and I look forward to the robust discussion to finalize the recommendation moving forward. But for me, it was a nice 4th of July.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that the greatest problem with fireworks generally tends to be fireworks that are already outlawed.
Right. Yeah.
Like the ones that probably burnt down Karshner Elementary yesterday. Mr. Caulfield, you mentioned earlier in your comments that we were participating in a group with Pierce County exploring an emergency shelter. What's the source of funding on that?
Mayor, I believe it's CARES Act monies or some kind of a grant.
Or is it emergency, whatever?
Yeah.
Yes, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that's construction money, but not operation money, correct?
That's my understanding. It's 4.2 billion to build it. That's our understanding.
John, are they actually considering building it, or are they considering purchasing?
I don't know, but that's to acquire the asset or build the asset. That's kind of, again, it was one meeting last week. So.
What else do I have? Oh, the trailers for COVID-19 testing were mentioned. Those will be operated by the County Department of Emergency Management, and they're staffed with contract medical personnel. They've already started. So that will be moving around the county, but the health department's primary avenue for testing in the plan is through the existing medical providers. So Multi-Care has identified like 90 potential sites where that would be on. So hopefully the health department's up and running as fast as the county mobile sites are, so we can get testing going. And I would just note that the County Economic Development Department already has those dashboards developed for loans. They report to the county council regularly every week. And so maybe we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm sure they'd share that with you, or the pieces that are applicable. Is there anything else to come before the council before we go to executive session?
No, Mayor.
So this again, if you're listening at home, is a bit unusual given the COVID Open Public Meeting Act rules set down by the governor's office. We will go into a recess for an executive session of approximately 20 minutes pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1I to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the city. The council is not expected to take any final action following the executive session. We will come back and we will then adjourn without taking further action. I will come back to this Zoom meeting to announce that, after which time we will go into a closed session for discussion of labor relations under RCW 4230-140 . So we are in recess and council go to the executive session meeting. Thank you.
Is there another link for that?
20 minutes.
It's in the council script email.
Got it. Okay.
Good.
We're all here.
All right, Mayor Peterson, Wayland, members of the council. I have with us tonight our WCIA Council on Justice and
So we've completed our executive session. We will now be going into a closed session, which can occur outside the meeting. So we are adjourned.